Tequila to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm talking about that defensive line. An interior defensive line is the conversation for this episode and the depth chart, because the 49ers have undergone some real changes at the position. Anytime that you lose a player called the blueprint, you're going to have question marks. And of course, I'm talking about Eric Armstead. The 49ers went to Armstead and they tried to get him to take a significant pay cut. And of course, depending on what side you're on, player side or on the team side, you might think it was warranted because he's been injured a lot. Or you might think, hey, Armstead has earned his money in the past. And I think both things are true. In this circumstance, it's unfortunate that the team and the player couldn't come to a conclusion that worked for both. But oftentimes when money's involved, and this is a business, when it comes to the NFL, sometimes decisions have to be made. So the 49ers and John Lynch came to an agreement with Eric Armstead about allowing him to move on and go seek other opportunities around the league. And it didn't take him long, once he was released, to go find a landing spot with his former general manager, Trent Baalke, in Jacksonville. But what was behind it and what was left was some holes that needed to be filled by the San Francisco 49ers. We know the 49ers spent money when it came to the edge rush. They spent money on Leonard Floyd. They spent money on Yetur Gross-Matos. So they're spending money on guys that are going to help this team when it comes to the edge defender role. Well, what about interior defensive line? I don't think interior defensive line is often discussed, but has been a prominent issue for the 49ers over the last couple seasons. The 49ers definitely made a decision after 2019 to go and get defensive tackles that could stop the run. That was why they intended on drafting Javon Kinlaw, bring in someone who was bigger, more physical to stop the run in place of Buckner. Now, of course, financials played into that decision as well, but you can definitely see it. Signings like Hassan Ridgeway through time also displayed their willingness to want to stop the run. So 49ers all of a sudden go Jayvon Hardgrave last year. Armstead was always your run stopper. And Hardgrave is not known for being a good run stopper, but he is known for getting after the quarterback, a la the same way that Buckner was. So the 49ers kind of returned to the mold that they thought they were getting with the 2019 team in 2023. So the San Francisco 49ers defensive line has underwent a little bit of a shift over the last few weeks or months, actually. There's definitely been a shift in what's going to happen with this defensive line, and I want to talk all about it in this episode. I want to talk about how the San Francisco 49ers are going to play this season with this defensive line and start putting them in depth. And let me know along the way what you feel about this 49ers defensive line depth. Do you feel that I have it right when we go through these, or is there something wrong? I'm always interested to see your perspective on the whole scenario. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And we're going to start with these guys on the interior, the big guys. There's not going to be very many roster spots available. I mean, how many guys are going to actually make this team? For the interior defensive line, the 49ers have kept 4. They have kept 5. So some guys are going to be on notice about what happens. But I think the number one guy now is Jayvon Hardgrave. The 49ers have their big defensive tackle. They signed him last year in free agency, and he did add production to the inside of the 49ers defensive line through pass rush. I think a lot of people argue they didn't feel like they got enough for the amount of money that the 49ers spent. But I think when you look at what happened the year before, 49ers got no production, no interior pass rush from their defensive line. Now, once Armstead was healthy in the playoffs, he did big things back in 2022. But the 49ers weren't getting production from anyone else. They had less than 3 sacks coming from everyone else. You had to get production in the interior defensive line to help take pressure off of guys like Nick Bosa and some of the other outside edge rushers. So the 49ers went and spent money on Hardgrave. He walked away with 7.5 sacks. I'm sure a lot of people would love double digits, but 7.5 was a lot more than you were getting from the interior pass rush beforehand. But where Hardgrave struggled was against the run game. And as he got nicked up through the season and played more snaps, it was very apparent that he wasn't going to hold up as consistently against the run as people were hoping. So Hardgrave is going to have another season, another opportunity, but now he's the centerpiece of this interior defensive line. Armstead's gone. Javon Kinlaw's gone. So Hardgrave now leads a group of some newcomers to the 49ers. There are, of course, some holdovers, some guys the 49ers have had on this roster that they've continued to develop or have been working with for a little while. But Hardgrave is going to have to carry the weight on the inside. He's going to have to put pressure on the quarterback from the defensive tackle spot, and he's going to have to play better against the run in 2024 than he did in 2023. But the 49ers had to go out and they had to help him. So what do? They go out and they trade for Malik Collins. Malik Collins comes over from the Houston Texans, a system very familiar to what the 49ers run. DeMeco Ryans doesn't run the exact system when it comes to defensive line, but a similar one. And with Collins, you're getting an explosive first step. You're getting a guy that creates penetration, gets in the backfield, is able to run down the line of scrimmage in the zone game. He's a very technical defensive lineman. But you lost Armstead, so you have to replace him with a variety of players. Malik Collins is going to be the first step in helping that direction. With Hardgrave and Malik Collins, they're going to be able to generate pass rush. They're going to be able to push that interior pocket of the offensive line potentially into the quarterback. You need to affect quarterback play if you're going to be able to affect the team. And we talked about this in the edge rush video. Leonard Floyd on the outside, Bosa on the other. Now you have 2 legit pass rushers on the inside as well with Malik Collins and then also with Jayvon Hardgrave. Now we know Gross Matos will sometimes be in there on the interior defensive line, and that's okay. You need to have a rotation and a few players that can step in and make plays. Now, when you have this particular unit in, when you have Hardgrave and you have Collins, you're going to have to worry about getting pushed back when it comes to the run game. They're going to work on low pad level. They're going to work on penetration. They're going to work on getting skinny and breaking double teams. But they've got to keep the defensive line intact so that way they keep offensive players off their linebackers. That's a huge goal for the 49ers, and it hasn't always been the case. I think last year was the year where it really felt like this run game, a run defense got pushed around. Before the 49ers made enough plays, even in 2019, where the run defense wasn't the best, where they gave up 112 yards per game, you still felt like they were going to get key stops and they were going to make plays when they had to get off the field. And then if you got to 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, they were going to absolutely get home with that gold rush. Well, I think last year was the first time it felt like we just can't stop the run. And so the 49ers losing Armstead means you're losing a key cog in stopping that run game. So Collins is going to have to really step up his game. Now, he showed the potential to be able to split double teams and make plays. He's going to have to make sure that when he's not able to split double teams, that he's holding up and not giving up ground. You cannot afford to get pushed back and allow offensive lines to reset the line of scrimmage. If they reset the line of scrimmage, number one, that means they're automatically going to get yards in the running game. Number two, that means they're going to get pushed into your linebackers. When less space for linebackers means they can't avoid blocks and they get caught up in traffic. You get caught up in traffic, you can't get there to make the tackle. So it's a key ingredient to successful defensive play is to not just get into the backfield and create havoc, but also be able to hold up against double teams and not allow them to get a push. So that way your linebackers can run free. You want to occupy blockers to keep your linebackers free, so that way guys aren't free to go get to the second level, and you want to be able to not get pushed back into their way so they have free lanes to run, find their windows, get downhill, and make tackles. So Malik Collins comes in. He's going to be next to Hardgrave, and they're going to have a key role. Right now, I would have Collins and Hardgrave as the 1-2 defensive tackles on the inside. It could change. We're going to talk about some of the other guys as well coming up right now, because 49ers also brought in Jordan Elliott. And if you're into 49ers content, no, not that Jordan Elliott, not Splash Cousin, one of my favorites, but Jordan Elliott from the Cleveland Browns. And Jordan Elliott brings the aspect that you definitely want in a defensive tackle, as he can stop the run. The guy can blow up double teams, and he is very stout. He has an anchor to not get pushed back, and that was very important. One of the things the 49ers have missed since they haven't had players like Hassan Ridgeway was the guy that can stop the run. When Ridgeway was with the 49ers and Kinlaw was healthy, the 49ers run defense was very effective. What you lost, though, was the ability to get after the quarterback at a high rate. So the 49ers are trying to find a way that they can have the best of both worlds. Jordan Elliott can stop the run. Malik Collins can rush the passer. Jayvon Hardgrave, perceivably can do both. And you're looking for a steady rotation that's going to be able to hold up. So adding a player like Jordan Elliott was very important to this 49ers defense. Jordan Elliott is very talented. The thought process, and it was asked, on the Red and Bull show, me and Mark talking, and someone's, I think they said that Larry Krueger said Jordan Elliott potentially could start. And I would never count that out for the mere fact that these two guys haven't been on the 49ers. We don't know exactly who they are or how they're valued. So I think those guys are going to be in direct competition, and I'm looking forward to it. Two distinct methods of getting it done at the defensive line position. One, Malik Collins, built aggressively on speed, athleticism, and putting together good moves and penetration. And Jordan Elliott, who has a good first step, not as much explosiveness as Collins, but is able to generate pass rush and is very stout against the run. So I'm liking this tandem. I'm liking this group as part of a rotation, a three-headed rotation right now. Of course, you always need four. 49ers, Chris Kaserik like to rotate their defensive line pretty consistently with waves of guys and try to keep these guys fresh when you get in the later parts of the game. They're still playing at the highest of levels. An offensive line has been out there the entire game. Now, a defensive line that's been rotating is going to be a lot healthier when you get to the end of the game, and hopefully you can shut down the run and you can close games out by getting after the quarterback. So Jordan Elliott was a great signing. So 49ers hit it. Malik Collins is going to be a solid player for them as far as pass rush. They got him for a cheap price and coming in and generating pressure. And then Jordan Elliott against the run should be very stout and also has the upside to be able to rush the passer as well. I think that was two really good signings for the 49ers. Same way they went out, edge rush, attacked it. Gross Matos, Floyd, two edge rushers who do it a little bit different, but are also going to be able to make plays. Same thing with the defensive tackles. I think that's a good way to go about it. Get guys who are proficient in both areas, pass rush and run game. I like the way they did it. They were able to bring back Kevin Givens. So Givens has been a solid rotational piece for the San Francisco 49ers for a few years. And of course, he was undrafted and then developed, and he's got a wicked first step, and he can get off the ball quick. And then he uses his speed and penetration to be able to create havoc in the backfield. Where he struggles is a lot like we talked about with Hardgrave. This is a 49ers makeup of their defensive line problem, is he can't anchor. He gets pushed back. He gets drove back a lot of times, 3-4 yards, and that generates problems for Fred Warner, Trey Greenlaw, and others to be able to get up there, get to the ball carrier, and make a play. Because a lot of times he's getting pushed up, he's giving up ground, and you just can't have that. So there are some strengths in Givens' game that I think fit what Chris Kaserik really loves: the penetration, the speed, athleticism to run sideline to sideline and help this defense be able to run guys down when they try to spread you out horizontal or get those outside zone or toss plays to the outside. He can create and get after and help you out in that department. So I think Kevin Givens is still a good player. I think the 49ers are ultimately hoping that some of the guys I'm talking about after can step up. But Givens, they feel comfortable with. They know what kind of player he is. He's obviously very cheap, and he's been in this position. This has been his exact role, the fourth defensive tackle, part of that second wave rotation. So Kevin Givens right now likely is on the inside of this roster, but 49ers have a pretty good defensive line. Even though they lost Eric Armstead, it's still pretty good. Next up, Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis is drafted in the 6th round. 2 years ago, and he was injured. He was on the PUP list. They drafted him late. They knew he had injury concern. What's interesting about Kalia Davis is the fact that he played linebacker in college until late in his career. Then they moved him to defensive line. So it was an adjustment. Not only was it an adjustment for Kalia Davis as far as what he had to do on the field, going from playing a Mike linebacker to playing a guy that's going to have his hand in the ground and get off the football and learn different techniques, but also he had to put weight on his body. He had to change his body. He had to add weight to be able to withstand playing defensive line. I think in some cases that made him a little bit of top heavy when he was in college. He would lose balance because he had a little bit more weight up top. Now, through the last 2 years, I'm very hopeful that he's been able to kind of, counteract that, get more balance in his lower half. And I felt like he did. And he spent the entire rookie season on PUP. He had 3 weeks of practice at the end of the year. 49ers could open up the window. They did not activate him for the rest of the season, but it was good. They said he was really good. He was practice player of the weeks. He was doing very good. So they're very optimistic. Last year he came into training camp. Everyone's optimistic, and he started getting hurt, and he started not being on the field, and missing those snaps is huge. Came back at the end of training camp, came back at the end of preseason, and was able to play in the last preseason game. Last year when we went to 53-man roster, I'm like, I don't think he did enough. I don't think he's going to be on this football team because he only had the 1 week. Well, the 49ers elected to keep him, and they had him active during the season. So Kalia Davis got some reps during the year. Now his first look, he looked pretty good. 18 really good snaps against the Philadelphia Eagles. Problem is, after that, it wasn't always there. You saw a guy that played high. He wasn't as fast as you'd expect from an athlete of his stature who was a former linebacker. And that was one of the things that John Lynch was very high on, was he had that first step athleticism and quickness like DJ Jones is who he equated him to, enough that they gave him DJ Jones's number. So with Kalia Davis, we know there's upside. We just haven't seen it yet. Well, this is it. This is the training camp. He has to prove it, where he has to prove that he can make this roster. He has to convince the 49ers to keep 5 interior defensive linemen again. His problem, there's 5 probably edge rushers that they want to keep because they don't want to lose Drake Jackson. They don't want to lose Robert Beal. So Kalia Davis has got an uphill climb to make this roster. He's got potential. He's going to have to go out there now and live up to the potential that he's displayed so far. So Kalia Davis right now on the outside looking in, but talk about a guy that has the ability to be stout against the run because of his low center of gravity and the way he can play low, but the quickness, the ability to dive in there. I mean, one of the things that was so fun about watching his college film was how aggressive he was off the line of scrimmage, and he would get up there and he would penetrate and blow plays up in the backfield. He didn't always finish the plays, but he would blow them up because of how quick and how fast and how special he was in that department. I think where he struggles a little bit, sometimes he's easy to get trapped. He's easy to go the wrong way. He struggles with misdirection, locating the football. Those things he has to get a little bit better at. But I think overall he's still a good prospect. We'll see what happens. I think this is where the rubber meets the road for Kalia Davis. Either he's going to impress and he's going to make the team as a 5th defensive tackle. I think they would love for him to be able to overtake Kevin Givens, but we'll see if he can make this team. The next up after that, Ernest Brown. He comes over from the Los Angeles Rams. He was a 5th round pick by the Rams in 2021. So you're getting a guy that's been in the division, and you kind of have an idea of who he is. Now, he been a little bit of a tweener. He played defensive end in college, and he looks like a guy that could go either way. Looks like the 49ers are going to try to move him to the interior defensive line. We'll see what happens. But this is common for them to take a defensive end in college and then move them inside, a lot like what they did with Spencer Wagee. Now, Wagee gone. The 49ers released Wagee or waived Wagee. He was claimed by the Green Bay Packers, so he's on the Green Bay Packers now. But Wagee was another guy who played defensive end in college that they moved inside or tried to develop him as a defensive tackle. Put a little bit of weight on him. You get him up to 290, 295 pounds, and they use their quickness to be able to be penetrators on the interior defensive line. So Ernest Brown's had some experience in the division, experience with the Rams. So a guy the 49ers are bringing in to compete. We'll see what he can do. And then I glossed over and forgot about T.Y. McGill. I think T.Y. McGill is actually right behind Kalia Davis. And everyone that's a 49er fan knows T.Y. McGill has helped this football team over the last couple of years. Last year, he spent most of his time on the practice squad, but another guy that's built in the penetrator mold. He gets after it, gets in the backfield, and when he wins initially, he wins big. When he doesn't win, he can give up ground. And that's kind of how a lot of these guys are, the 49ers defensive line. If they win early, they've got enough speed and athleticism to be real disruptors. If they do not, they have the problem of getting beat and getting pushed back. And T.Y. McGill is no different. I think T.Y. McGill needs to get better again against the run, but he's been in the league for a long time. So I don't know how much more improving he's going to do, but I like him as a depth piece. I like him as a guy the 49ers have in case somebody gets injured ahead of him, to be able to step in, who understands his defense, been playing for Chris Kaserik for 2 years now. So I think that he's solid. So him, then Ernest Brown, and then probably the one that 49er fans have been really excited about is Evan Anderson, 49ers new undrafted free agent. He's a big dude, 6 foot tall, over 325 pounds. He's got 32-inch arms, not the biggest arms or lengthwise, but you've got a large, mass of a man. And when you're talking about run stopping and being a two-gapper, this is the kind of player and the kind of build you're looking for. I would say he's a little short for a defensive lineman. Normally they're 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", but that's not a real concern as long as he can play with low pad level and be able to hold up against double teams. I would say his first step is okay. Probably could get a better first step. Maybe Chris Kaserik can help him get off the football better. I think that he is a guy that's got the size you're looking for. I just wonder if he translates. This guy reminds me a lot of Darion Daniels, who they had out of Nebraska a few years ago, that they brought in, that everyone was super high on. He ended up being on the 49ers practice squad for a couple years. And you get the same sort of thing here. I think Anderson needs to make sure he plays better with low pad level. I think sometimes he gets a little high, and on occasion, when he gets squared up with a double team, he gets pushed absolutely back. So I think he's a developmental guy. He doesn't exactly have the ability to win with secondary pass rush moves. Once again, a guy that if he wins initially, he's going to win. If he loses, he's going to lose bad. He doesn't have the secondary pass rush moves to be able to counteract and use the next move and be able to get to the quarterback. So he's what I'm going to keep my eye on because he's got a lot of potential. One of those things where it's a lot of raw technique right now. If Chris Kaserik could get his hands on him and he can learn a lot of the hand technique, a lot of the body work, and also keeping his center of gravity low and his pad level low, then he could be a guy that the 49ers ultimately look at, as a guy that could maybe break into this roster. I think he's going to be on the practice squad this year. I think that's a likelihood for him. I think they see him as a long-term project as well. But he's a different type of player than the other guys that are on the 49ers roster. Most of the 49ers roster is built with guys that win with speed. And so he's a different element. So having different elements is always a key to helping your football team get a little bit better. So just to go down, this is the depth chart for the 49ers right now. Jayvon Hardgrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott. And if you have those two guys switched, Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott, no argument for me. I think it's an open competition in training camp, and the best player is going to get the starting reps. We know that each one of them have a unique strength. With Collins, it's pass rush. With Elliott, it's stopping the run. So you got that going for you. And then Kevin Givens, number 4. That's pretty much the role that he's had over the last couple seasons, rotating in as defensive tackle number 4. Kalia Davis, a guy with tremendous upside, hasn't been able to stay healthy. Who do we talk about this the same way? Danny Gray. And they come from the same draft. One in the 3rd round, one in the 6th round. Guys with tremendous upside, but haven't really been able to get onto the field because of injury concerns. So this is their year to be able to prove it. I think they were actually 2022 draft. So they've got some work to do to be able to get onto the roster. And Kalia Davis does have the athletic ability. He does have the size. You just got to put it together and stay healthy. Then T.Y. McGill. So T.Y. McGill's number 6. Obviously, 49ers could keep 5 defensive linemen in the interior. Unlikely they would keep 6. That would put T.Y. McGill, potentially on the practice squad again. Ernest Brown, a 5th-round pick. We know the 49ers love 5th-round picks. In 2021, your 5th-round picks were Talanoa Hufanga and Keanu Lenore. So potentially maybe Ernest Brown has some of that 5th-round magic. He didn't work out for the Rams. Didn't have a lot of opportunities. He played in 12 games there. Could he have more opportunities with the 49ers? I think he's got a long way to go to build up to it. And then, of course, undrafted free agent Evan Anderson brings it up, at the end. He's got to learn the system. He's got to get used to playing for the 49ers. And I know because I watched Javon Kinlaw and I've watched other defensive linemen who come here like Kalia Davis, and their first responsibilities are always get low, play low. So Chris Caceres going to put him through the ringer about getting him to play low and getting that pad level low. But let me know what you guys think about this 49ers defensive line, the interior defensive line. Number one, do you think the 49ers defensive line, the interior, is good enough to stop the run? And do you prefer Malik Collins to Jordan Elliott as far as starting, or do you think it should be the other way around? And what do you think about Kalia Davis? Can he finally make this roster? Let me know in the comment section down below. I think it's a fun conversation. 49ers have worked on improving the defensive line. They lost Eric Armstead. They added guys who play a lot of snaps and don't get injured. But will there be enough production to make up for the blueprint? I think it's something that's going to be interesting to see when we get into preseason training camp and ultimately the regular season to see how these guys handle it. But I think they did a pretty good job of kind of filling some of the holes left by Armstead moving on. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. If you're listening to the audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And like always, this episode brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.